Have you ever been attacked with words, criticized, accused, or cornered, and felt the urge to defend yourself? That very instinct is what destroys your power. Today, we reveal Machiavelli's ruthless trick, how to flip the power instantly by refusing to defend yourself. 1. Accusations strike you. When criticism pierces your name, your first instinct is always the same. You want to defend yourself. You want to explain, to justify, to prove that you are innocent. But in this very act, in this desperate scramble to explain, you make your first and most fatal mistake. For the moment you defend, you reveal weakness. The moment you justify, you admit that the other person's judgment matters. And in the arena of power, this is the greatest error a man can commit. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Florentine master of strategy, understood this better than anyone. He observed that men are not moved by truth, but by perception. They are not swayed by facts, but by dominance. If you defend yourself, you do not appear strong, you do not appear noble. You appear subordinate. You place your opponent above you, giving them authority to question you. And the one who questions is always the one who controls the stage. The one who defends is already at a disadvantage, chained by the terms set by another. Imagine a court where two men stand before a crowd. One accuses, the other defends. To the people watching, the accuser appears powerful, decisive, confident in his authority to judge. The defender, no matter how eloquent, no matter how factual, appears reactive. He is not leading the play, he is merely responding. His role is not of a lion, but of a man cornered. This is the curse of defense, that it makes you look smaller, weaker, guilty by posture alone. In politics, in courts, in daily life, we see this repeated endlessly. Leaders who explain themselves, rulers who justify their actions, men who argue desperately to clear their names. All fall from grace, not because they are guilty, but because they allow themselves to be placed in the role of a defendant. Machiavelli knew that power does not need to defend. It must simply act, declare, and let its authority speak louder than arguments. Think carefully. When has a king ever defended himself before his subjects? When has a true ruler ever wasted breath proving his innocence? No, the great ones do not stoop to explanation. They let their silence, their posture, their sheer presence drown the words of their enemies. For to explain is to confess weakness, but to remain above the attack is to embody strength. Consider this. When someone insults you in public and you rush to justify yourself, what happens? You look desperate, flustered, anxious to clear your name. The crowd does not remember your argument, they remember your reaction. They remember that you looked unsettled, that you looked guilty, even if you were not. But if you stay calm, if you refuse to bow to their words, if you hold yourself with dignity and superiority, something changes. The crowd begins to wonder if perhaps the insult is nothing but noise. They begin to doubt the accuser instead of you. By refusing to defend, you shift the burden back onto the one who attacked. This is why defense is weakness. It is not because your defense is untrue, but because your defense surrenders the stage. The very act of explaining validates the attack. It says to the world, yes, your accusation has weight, and I must respond. It gives life to the insult, gives credibility to the critic, gives power to the enemy. And Machiavelli teaches us never to give our enemies what they crave most: recognition. The truth is simple: the strong do not justify. The strong do not plead. The strong dictate the terms of the game. If someone accuses them, they do not explain. They ignore, or they strike back with greater force. But they never kneel to defend. Defense places you into a frame you did not create. And in the theater of power, the one who creates the frame creates the truth. If your opponent paints you as guilty, and you defend yourself, you are already inside his painting, inside his story. You are a character in his play, and the audience sees you as such. But if you refuse to defend, if you refuse to even acknowledge the frame, then you force him to fight shadows, and the audience sees not your guilt, but his desperation. Watch closely in your own life. When you argue back, when you explain yourself endlessly, do you not feel drained? Do you not feel as if you have already lost before the fight is even finished? That is because explanation consumes energy, while silence radiates strength. Words betray need, but silence suggests control. Machiavelli would advise you waste no breath defending. Use your breath only to declare, to command, or to attack. In battle, soldiers who constantly defend will eventually be broken. In politics, rulers who constantly explain are eventually forgotten. In conversation, men who constantly justify are eventually ignored. Defense is not power. It is surrender dressed in words. And this, above all, is why the wise never defend themselves. If you wish to hold power, you must master the art of remaining above the accusations. Do not be pulled into the mud of argument. Do not allow others to make you dance to their tune. For every second you defend, you are giving them music to play with, Stay silent, stay unbothered, stay untouchable, and let your enemies burn their energy against a wall of stone. The crowd will see their weakness, not yours. A ruler is never remembered for how well he defended himself. He is remembered for how unshakable he stood, how untouchable he seemed, how little he allowed himself to be dragged into petty fights. Machiavelli knew that appearances matter more than truth, and the appearance of strength is shattered the moment you stoop to defend. To explain is to descend from your throne. To defend is to admit that another man's words can shake your foundation. And the prince, the ruler, the man of power, must never allow that illusion to be broken. Fear is a hidden weapon in the art of power, a weapon so subtle that many fail to recognize its force. It is not the sword, nor the tongue, but silence. For silence, when wielded with intention, creates a storm of uncertainty in the minds of those who dare to attack you. And Machiavelli, who studied the movements of princes and rulers, knew well that mystery is the most potent shield. Picture the moment an enemy accuses you, demands an answer, drags your name into the open arena. The crowd turns their eyes to you, waiting for your reaction, expecting your defense. And what do you give them? Nothing. No defense, no protest, no justification. Only silence. In that instant, the accuser feels the ground beneath his feet begin to tremble. He expected a fight, a scramble, a counter-argument. Instead, he receives a void. And a void is more terrifying than a storm. Why? Because the human mind cannot tolerate silence. It abhors emptiness. Where there are no words, the imagination rushes to fill the gap. And imagination, left unchecked, creates suspicions, doubts, and stories far greater than the original accusation. When you say nothing, you allow others to question everything. Is the accusation even worth answering? Is the accused so powerful that he does not need to respond? Or perhaps the accuser is desperate, throwing stones at a fortress that does not crumble. The silence becomes its own form of speech, louder and more unsettling than any defense could ever be. Machiavelli understood this principle in the courts of Florence. He saw how rulers who rushed to defend themselves seemed weak, but those who stood in silence, cloaked in mystery, inspired both fear and respect. People began to ask not whether the ruler was guilty, but why he did not answer. And the why was far more dangerous than any what. Silence plants questions, and questions spread faster than answers. Mystery is power because it cannot be touched. Words can be attacked, explanations can be torn apart, but silence cannot be refuted. You cannot argue with nothingness. You cannot defeat what refuses to step into the arena. In silence, you become untouchable, elusive, and this elusiveness feeds into the aura of authority. A ruler who says little is always feared more than one who talks too much. A man who does not explain himself appears to be hiding depths beyond comprehension. And in the world of power, it is always better to be feared as deep and unpredictable than to be dismissed as simple and transparent. Consider the contrast. The talkative man, eager to explain every word, every choice, every action, soon reveals the limits of his mind. The more he talks, the more people see through him, the more they measure him, the more they know what to expect. He becomes predictable, exposed, stripped of mystique. But the man of silence, the one who chooses his words like jewels, creates a fog around himself. The crowd leans in, trying to decipher him, trying to guess his motives, trying to understand what lies beneath the surface. And in that fog, his power grows, because he is no longer just a man. He is an enigma. This is the reason great rulers, great generals, and great manipulators have always mastered the art of withholding. They do not rush to fill silence with words. They let silence work for them, forcing others into discomfort. And discomfort is the soil in which doubt grows. An enemy faced with your silence begins to doubt the strength of his own accusations. He wonders if he has overstepped, if his words have fallen flat, if perhaps he has miscalculated the depth of your strength. The more he pushes for a response, the more desperate he appears. And the more desperate he appears, the weaker he becomes in the eyes of all who watch. There is also another dimension to silence. Fear. Silence unsettles because it is unnatural in moments of attack. Most men, when accused, rush to defend. When insulted, they reply. When cornered, they explain. But the man who does none of these things seems abnormal, dangerous, even inhuman. His calmness under fire suggests he knows something the rest do not. His refusal to play the game suggests he holds the true cards. And this fear, this sense that there is something hidden, something unknown, makes him untouchable. Mystery elevates you from the ordinary to the extraordinary. Think of how often men are destroyed not by guilt, but by their own explanations. They speak too much, they justify too much, and in their justifications, they expose weaknesses. The very act of answering pulls them down to the level of their accuser, but silence denies the enemy any foothold. It offers no weakness, no opening, no vulnerability to exploit. It leaves the enemy striking at shadows, wasting energy while you conserve yours. But silence must not be confused with passivity. It is not about retreat, it is about dominance. True silence is not the silence of fear, but the silence of mastery. It is the silence of the predator watching its prey, of the ruler observing his subjects, of the man who knows he is above the noise. This kind of silence radiates strength because it is intentional, deliberate, and controlled. Every moment you remain silent, you remind the world that you are the one who decides when and how to speak. And he who controls speech controls the narrative. The beauty of mystery is that it multiplies itself. When you refuse to answer, people begin to invent answers for you. They whisper, they speculate, they argue among themselves. Some will believe you are innocent, others will believe you are guilty, but all will agree that you are not ordinary. And in the theater of power, to be seen as extraordinary is to rise above the masses. Mystery gives birth to legends, and legends hold more power than truth ever could. Observe history, and you will see this pattern repeated. Leaders who revealed little of themselves were remembered as cunning, powerful, almost supernatural. Those who spoke too freely were remembered as weak, transparent, easy to manipulate. Silence and mystery elevate a man into the realm of myth, while explanations chain him to the dust of ordinary men. Machiavelli understood that appearances matter more than reality, and nothing enhances appearance like the aura of mystery. So when accusations come, when criticism strikes, when enemies demand your answer, resist the urge to explain. Hold your silence, let the weight of the unknown settle into the room, and watch as your enemies unravel before you. For silence does not merely protect you. It transforms you into something larger than life, something untouchable, something feared. There comes a moment when silence alone is not enough. To remain quiet can unsettle your enemies, but to truly dominate them, you must learn to strike back. Not with apologies, not with explanations, but with authority. Machiavelli knew that the greatest danger lies not in being attacked, but in being trapped in someone else's frame. The accuser seeks to corner you, to force you to defend, to place you in the role of the guilty. And once you accept that role, no matter how strong your arguments, you are already lost. The way to win is not to play the game at all, but to seize the board and turn it against your opponent. When they accuse you, the worst thing you can do is answer directly. A direct answer is submission. Instead, you must counterattack. Not recklessly, but with precision, with calmness, with the unshakable authority of one who commands. Think of it as a duel of words. Your enemy thrusts his blade expecting you to block, but you do not block. You sidestep and thrust back, not in defense but in dominance. The aggressor suddenly finds himself the one on trial. His question becomes his weakness, and his attack becomes his downfall. Picture this scene. A man in court is accused of corruption. The crowd waits for his defense, for his desperate list of excuses. Instead, he turns to the accuser and says, "And what proof do you bring? Are your own hands so clean that you dare to stand as judge?" In that moment, the crowd forgets the original accusation. Their eyes turn to the accuser, forced now to defend himself. Authority is not about answering. It is about flipping the spotlight so that the one who sought to control the narrative becomes trapped in his own words. The counterattack must always come from a position of superiority. If you appear flustered, if you lash out with anger, you reveal insecurity. But if you strike calmly, with a voice steady and unshaken, your authority magnifies. The audience sees not a man under attack, but a man in command, a ruler untouchable, a prince who cannot be forced into defense. Every word you speak must carry the weight of inevitability, as though it is not you who stands accused, but the one foolish enough to challenge you. Machiavelli would remind us that politics, courts, and human affairs are not governed by truth but by perception. It does not matter if the accusation is false or true. It matters how it is perceived. And perception favors the strong. If you stand silent, you create mystery. But if you strike back with authority, you create dominance. You do not just deny the frame, you destroy it. You seize control of the battlefield, and you force everyone to see that you will not bend, you will not kneel, you will not justify. Instead, you dictate. A counterattack can take many forms. Sometimes it is a question that throws the accuser off balance. Sometimes it is an insult delivered with surgical precision, exposing their weakness. Sometimes it is a complete redirection, shifting the entire conversation to a ground where you hold the advantage. The strategy is always the same. Never let the enemy decide the terms. You are not a defendant, you are a ruler, and rulers do not answer, they command. Consider the tactic of inversion. When accused of cruelty, do not explain your compassion. Instead say, "A weak ruler is the true cruelty, for he invites chaos and suffering upon his people." Suddenly the conversation is no longer about your supposed flaw, but about the weakness of those who question you. When accused of arrogance, do not deny it. Instead, say, would you prefer a leader too timid to act? In this way, what was meant as an insult becomes a crown. You turn poison into nourishment, and in doing so, you show that you are beyond the reach of ordinary attacks. The brilliance of this approach lies in how it reshapes perception. The accuser, expecting to see you squirm, instead finds himself the target of suspicion. The audience, expecting to see you justify, instead witnesses your dominance. And even those who may not believe your words still feel the weight of your authority. People do not follow truth. They follow strength. They are drawn to the one who seems unshackable, the one who cannot be forced into corners, the one who dictates reality itself. But there is a deeper layer to the counterattack. It is not merely about words, but about posture, presence, and timing. Speak too quickly, and you appear defensive. Wait too long, and you appear hesitant. Strike at the perfect moment with calm precision, and the effect is devastating. The room shifts, the energy bends, and suddenly you are no longer the accused, you are the judge. Your enemy's words echo hollow, while yours resonate with finality. Machiavelli understood this game well. He observed how rulers who defended themselves became prey, while those who countered with authority rose above the fray. To defend is to share power with your accuser, to grant them legitimacy. To counterattack is to strip that legitimacy away, to remind all present that the throne is yours and yours alone. Authority is not begged for, it is taken, and the counterattack is the method by which you seize it. In the theater of power, appearances are everything. A calm, commanding counterattack does not need to be true. It only needs to be decisive. The crowd will remember your strength, not the details. They will forget the accusation, but they will not forget the image of you standing tall, unbothered, turning your enemy's strike into his own downfall. That image, that memory of dominance, will linger longer than any argument. Think of the lion surrounded by jackals. If he roars in fear, he reveals weakness. If he tries to explain to the jackals why he's still king, they will laugh. But if he strikes one down with calm ferocity, the rest scatter in terror. Such is the nature of counterattack. It is not about engaging in debate. It is about showing, without doubt, that you are untouchable, that those who dare to challenge you will regret their boldness. And so, when accusations rise, when enemies seek to pull you down, remember this: your strength is not in defending, but in turning their attack into your opportunity. Authority is seized in the moment you refuse to play the role of the guilty, and instead cast yourself as the ruler, the judge, the one who dictates the terms of reality. Words can be weapons, but only when wielded with precision, confidence, and the cold calm of one who knows he cannot be dethroned. In every conflict of words, in every battle for power, there is something far greater than truth, facts, or arguments. That something is the frame. The frame is the battlefield itself, the invisible structure that defines who is right, who is wrong, who is strong, and who is weak. Most men never realize they are trapped inside a frame created by another. They argue endlessly, defend desperately, fight for survival inside boundaries that were never their own. But the Machiavellian knows power belongs not to the man who speaks the loudest, but to the man who sets the frame. What is the frame? It is the underlying assumption of the situation, the hidden stage upon which the play unfolds. When someone accuses you, they are not simply throwing words. They are building a frame. The frame says you are the one on trial, and they are the judge. The frame says you must answer, and they will decide if your answer is enough. If you accept this frame, you have already lost. No matter how brilliant your defense, no matter how eloquent your words, you are still the one inside their structure, dancing to their music. To control the frame is to flip the hierarchy. It is to reject their assumptions, to refuse their terms, to seize the authority of judge for yourself. When they attack, you do not respond as the accused. You respond as the ruler. You reshape the scene so that they appear petty, desperate, unworthy, while you appear unshaken, commanding, untouchable. The crowd no longer sees you defending. They see you dictating. And in politics, in courts, in personal battles, it is not truth that people follow, but the one who commands the stage. Consider how easily men are manipulated by the frame. A clever speaker begins with a question that traps his opponent. He asks, "Why did you fail to act?" If the opponent answers, he accepts the premise that he failed. If he denies, he still accepts the role of the accused. The only way to escape is not to answer, but to break the frame entirely. The real failure is not mine, but yours, for asking a question that reveals your ignorance. In that moment, the audience no longer thinks of your failure. They think of his. You did not defend, you reframed. And reframing is the highest form of dominance. The wise ruler understands that truth is pliable, that reality itself bends to those who control the frame. In the court of public opinion, it is not the facts that matter, but the story told around them. A ruler accused of cruelty does not deny it. He reframes it as strength. A ruler accused of arrogance does not apologize. He reframes it as confidence. A ruler accused of deception does not explain. He reframes it as strategy. In this way, every attack becomes a crown, every insult becomes armor, every accusation becomes proof of authority. By controlling the frame, he turns weakness into strength. This is why Machiavelli insisted that appearance is more important than reality. Reality may be fixed, but appearance can always be reframed. The people see what you allow them to see, and they believe what you make them believe. If you let your enemies set the frame, the people will see you as they wish. But if you seize it, if you dictate the narrative, the people will see you as you choose. And in the theater of power, choice belongs not to the honest, but to the cunning. Think of how often rulers throughout history have fallen not because they lacked strength, but because they allowed their enemies to define them. They were painted as tyrants, as weaklings, as fools, and because they defended instead of reframing, the image stuck. But those who mastered the art of framing became legends. They were feared, revered, respected, even when they committed the very crimes their enemies accused them of. It did not matter, because they defined the narrative, and the narrative is what survives. The technique is subtle yet devastating. When accused, you do not say, "I am not guilty." You say, "This is not about me." It is about the weakness of those who would waste time with such accusations. When criticized, you do not argue. You say, "That the fact that I am criticized only proves my importance." No one wastes breath on the insignificant. Each word turns the frame upon itself, forcing your enemy's weapon to pierce his own chest. This is not defense, this is dominance. But to master framing, you must train yourself to think beyond the surface. The ordinary man reacts to the content of words, but the Machiavellian looks at the structure beneath them. He asks, who is positioned as judge and who as defendant? Who is positioned as strong and who as weak? Who is speaking from above and who from below? And once he sees the structure, he breaks it, flips it, rebuilds it to his own advantage. The content is irrelevant. The structure is everything. The danger of failing to control the frame is immense. Once you are trapped in another's structure, every word you speak strengthens their position. Even silence, if not deliberate, can appear as weakness. You must be ruthless in rejecting any frame that lowers your authority. If someone positions you as the accused, you must immediately flip it so that they become the one in question. If someone tries to corner you with a moral argument, you must dismiss morality as weakness and elevate strength as virtue. In this way, no attack can bind you, for you refuse to play the role they assign. Machiavelli saw politics as a stage, and on that stage, the one who defines the roles controls the play. The people may think they are watching truth unfold, but in reality, they are watching a performance carefully framed by those who understand power. Do not be the actor reciting lines written by your enemies. Be the playwright who dictates the script. For the one who writes the story controls how it is remembered, and empowered. Memory is everything. To control the frame is to rise above argument. It is to move from the level of the accused to the level of the ruler. It is to seize the invisible crown that hangs above every conflict, the crown of definition. Once you wear that crown, every attack, every word, every accusation bends to your will. Your enemies may shout, but their words echo within the frame you created. They may fight, but they fight on a battlefield of your choosing. And in the world of Machiavelli, victory belongs not to the loudest, nor to the most righteous, but to the one who controls the frame. In the struggle for power, most men fail because they fall into the oldest trap of all, the need to defend themselves. They explain, they justify, they argue, and in doing so they hand authority to their enemies. Machiavelli teaches us a darker wisdom: never defend. For defense is weakness, silence is mystery, counterattack is authority, and the frame is everything. To rise above the masses, you must reject the role of the accused. Let your silence gnaw at their certainty. Let your mystery disturb their confidence. Let your counterattack strike with calm dominance. And above all, seize control of the frame. For the one who controls the frame controls perception, and the one who controls perception controls reality. Remember this well. Truth does not decide victory, appearance does. And he who masters the art of appearing untouchable, unbothered, and unassailable will always stand above the rest, feared, respected, and obeyed. This is not merely a tactic. It is the essence of power. It is the Machiavellian way.